Well, thank you, Rachel. So here we are again for this week's webinar. Apologies for anyone who was scheduled to watch this webinar last week, but we had some technical issues and hence we have held it over to this week. Those who've been following our webinar series may have also noticed that we've changed from a Friday to a Thursday. That's something that we're going to now continue on as we go into 2021 with our webinars. As we do each week, we're just going to hold fire for a few minutes to let those who've registered join in. We've got quite a few people registered to watch this week's presentation, which is Sailing the Whitsundays, which for Nod and I is like going home. I spent 15 or 16 years up in the Whitsundays, most of those running Sunsail, the yacht charter company, and Nod, I think, did the same, probably about the same number of years, also at Sunsail and also on the mainland working on a lot of the larger maxi yachts and the dive vessels. And then to bring in some fresh ideas and updates, and someone who's currently in the Whitsundays, we've invited Jocelyn O'Keefe, who is the marketing manager of the Coral Sea Marina. So welcome, Jocelyn. And welcome to Nod. And in the background, as always, we have Rachel, who's put together this fantastic presentation. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk as if we're doing a cruise through the Whitsunday. So for the purpose of today, we're going to start our presentation from a departure from Coral Sea Marina, and then we'll move off around the Whitsundays. But before we do that, as always, just while we're waiting for those people who are registered to join in, we're just going to mention our next webinar is actually next Thursday, because we delayed today's by 1 week. And it's a liveaboard cruising tips from an owner. We have Sue Ellen Tompkin, who is the owner of a Helia 44 called Wild Heart, who's got a lot of experience, and over the last few years has been a constant contributor and support to Multi-Hull Solutions, and especially Rachel with writing stories and giving articles for Rachel to publish. So they're going to, Sue Ellen will be with us next Thursday to have a good chat. So that's going to be a really good one for those people who are looking to move aboard their catamarans to live. And then after that, after Christmas, on the 28th of January, we're very fortunate to have an Allegria 67 arrive 2 weeks ago into Thailand, into Phuket. So Andrew De Bruin and Paul Stamp, our new manager up there in Thailand, will be conducting a walkthrough of the Allegria 67. So we're very excited about that, because it's great to have what will be the second Allegria here in the Asian area, both of them up there in Thailand. As always, this is our 20th webinar, believe it or not. We started these back in May as our way of staying in contact with our client base. And you can go back and find all of our webinars on YouTube, on the Multi-Hull Solutions YouTube channel. So feel free to go in and have a look at any of our previous webinars. The number of views has been quite outstanding. As always, you can ask questions throughout today's presentation, and to do that, you click on the Q&A box, which you'll see there on your screen. Type the question. We'll then either answer it as we go, if it's relevant to the part of the discussion we're having, or if it's a general question, we might just let you know that we'll be holding it over to the Q&A session at the end. But please type in your questions. We do really like having the input from the viewers. So any question is welcome. My name is Greg Boller, and with Rachel, we've been putting together and hosting these webinars since May. I'm the new yacht sales manager at Multi-Hull Solutions. And with us today, as I said, is Michael Nod Crook. Many of you know Michael from all of our videos and from Multi-Hull Solutions. there's a great set of videos that Rachel and Nod put together called the European delivery videos that you can also see on our YouTube channel. Anyone thinking of purchasing a boat and picking up from the factory in 21 or 22 or 23, depending on COVID, it's certainly, those videos are certainly worth a watch. So I think we've got many of our participants have joined us now, so we might just jump in. We are talking today about the Whitsundays, just a bit of general knowledge. If you're flying to the Whitsundays, about an hour and a half flight north of Brisbane. If you're driving, it's a 12-hour drive. If you're sailing, it's around about 450 nautical miles from Mooloolaba, or 500 from Brisbane. And it's around about 950 nautical miles from Sydney. If you were sailing on a catamaran out of Brisbane or Mooloolaba to go up to the Whitsundays, you'd probably allow around about 5 days, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on the weather, if you wanted to go straight through. But also, obviously, between all along the coast there's so many anchorages and great stop-offs. It's easy to take 2 months to get to the Whitsundays. But if you did want to go straight through, about a 4 to 5 day sail. Sydney 2.5 hours, Melbourne 3 hours, and you can access the Whitsundays through the Proserpine Airport, which services Airlie Beach, or through Hamilton Island Airport. It's one of the rare locations in Australia where there's multiple airports servicing from all the major capital cities. What we'll now do is I might, so that it's just not me talking, I might just let, or actually what I will do is I'll just ask Jocelyn and Nod to turn off their videos, just so that we're not blocking the screen there. So that's better. I think everyone can now see the presentation. So Nod, would you like to talk about the seasons?
Okay, thanks, Greg. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on Whitsundays. I guess starting off at the start of the year after Christmas, going into the seasons in the Whitsundays is stereotypically we go in and start off with the wet season. And I guess what we do is then roll through into winter. So the sort of cruising seasons that we talk up in the Whitsundays is through the winter, where you get those cooler months. So we see there we've got our May to October, which we put as the best time of year. It is a humpback season, so they arrive around that time and then depart at the end of that season. So it's a spectacular time for sailing around the islands when you do get to see the humpback whales. And we've got those winds, which stereotypically those in the winter time we get some of the westerlies come in, but we don't predominantly have the pumping southeasters coming through. So we have those light winds at 10 to 15 knots. So apart from it being a bit cooler, just spectacular time to be up and sailing in the Whitsundays. Once we get through that September, October, and we're coming into summertime, again, lovely weather, starting to warm up a little bit. And as we put there, that hot tropical weather, probably if you're taking your boat up there, you'd be thankful if you paid the extra to get the air conditioning fitted into this season. But then we do get the stronger southeast winds coming through. And we've listed there at the bottom, the stinger season. So all the way along the coast up in North Queensland, we have the issue of having box jellyfish. But out on the islands, we don't have the problems with box jellyfish, but we do have the irukandji, small stingers, which come down with northerlies and are prolific in the islands during that time. So you have to take some caution wearing stinger suits when swimming in the water during that season.
I look good in a stinger suit.
You do. Only your wife tells you that, Greg.
So we'll click through there. Sorry, my mouse has just failed me. There we go. So sailing the Whitsundays. One of the what we call the Bible of the Whitsundays. I don't think you can go and make a decision to sail around the islands of the Whitsundays without having this book or this resource on board. I do believe it's also available to be downloaded electronically. But it's called The 100 Magic Miles. It's been written and put together for many, many years by David and Caroline Colfelt. When I say many years, I think since the early 80s. And it's a fantastic resource. So we always, whenever we're doing presentations on the Whitsundays, or back in the days when Nod and I would be sitting at the table briefing clients to take their yachts out on their bareboat charter. It's all done with the 100 Magic Miles in hand. It's got excellent descriptions, and it's got excellent and always up-to-date information. You can see there that we're now into the 13th edition.
That's right. So along with that and the Cruising the Coral Coast, those are really the only two publications you need for this area.
And on this screen here, this is a page that's taken from the book. This is actually a document that is produced by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. And they are basically a bit like a land-based national park. You have your rangers and so on. In the Whitsundays, the whole marine park is managed and controlled by the Marine Park Authority. And it's very important for anyone who's wanting to go and sail, whether it be privately around the Whitsundays or on a charter boat. It's very important that people are familiar with the areas and what you can and can't do in each of the different locations. And so down in that grid on the left-hand side, you can see there's general use zones, and then there's conservation park zones, and then buffer zones and marine national park zones and so on. And you can see in certain areas you can do just about anything. In other areas you can sort of look but not touch, and in some areas you can't even go into that location. So for instance, the pink area there, the preservation zone, is related up in the top of the screen there, Eshoby Island, and it's a no-go zone because it's a very important brooding ground for all of the birds. So again, you can sail near there, but you can't go ashore. And then the yellow zone, the conservation zone, is pretty much makes up most of the area along with the blue, and then the general zones. So we basically live most of the time sailing around the Whitsundays in either yellow, green or blue. So that's just an explanation of that. Very important for anyone that's cruising or sailing the Whitsundays to become familiar with that. Any comment on that, Jocelyn? Has anything changed or?
No, they do update that fairly regularly, and from my understanding, that information is then provided to the Coalfelts when they do a revision of the 100 Magic Miles. But you can also get a paper copy of that map from any of the chandleries around town and at the Marina office here, if anybody ever pops by. Very
good. And then over the page here, the other thing we wanted to put on just before we start the presentation in earnest is the public mooring information. And the reason we're doing this is you'll see that as we go around the Whitsundays sailing our virtual boat today, that we'll be talking a lot about picking up moorings. And so it's prolific, the amount of moorings that have now been put in place by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. Very, very smart. It stops anchor damage of the coral. It also just ensures that people are safe. One thing that is really good is that the moorings are all very well serviced. You would have found, if you've sailed in other locations where you come in and see a mooring, you don't know whether you can trust it or not. The great thing about the mooring system in the Whitsunday Islands is that all the moorings are well serviced and can be trusted. And as you'll see there, there's different colours, and they indicate uses. They also indicate the length of vessels, and they also indicate the maximum wind speeds that you can sit on that particular mooring. There is also some private moorings that are owned or licensed to commercial operators. You're allowed to pick up those at certain times if it's outside of the normal use of the commercial operator. But generally, it's better to pick up the public moorings. So, moving along. We also just wanted to bring up the fact that sailing in the Whitsundays is probably quite unique compared to a lot of other areas. If you've chartered boats in the Mediterranean or the Caribbean or Tahiti or Phuket, and Thailand and so on, part of the charter experience is the ability to anchor each night or pick up a mooring each night and go ashore and eat in the local restaurants, whether that be for lunch or dinner, and generally always find a town with provisions and so on. The big difference with the Whitsundays is it is still a wilderness area, And there's only 1 or 2 locations in the whole cruising area where you can get your essentials. And the main locations for that are Airlie Beach, of course, and secondary to that is Hamilton Island. And you can also find in a couple of other locations some small restaurants. Jocelyn, when was it was 2017 that you had the cyclone, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so since 2017, the whole makeup of the area has changed slightly because the Category 5 cyclone went through and did firstly a lot of damage to the infrastructure in terms of the resorts, but it also did a lot of damage underwater to the corals. So as we go through this discussion today, what we'll be doing is we'll be giving you an update on where the good snorkeling is and where the good places are to stop since the cyclone, because the previous well-known locations, some of them have been quite damaged in terms of the coral quality. So we'll be discussing that as we go. Okay, Jocelyn, you're an Airlie Beach lady. Would you like to just have a chat to us about starting out on a cruise from Airlie Beach? What to expect?
Yeah, so I think, you know, as you've said before, Airlie Beach it's a small township. It's very much a tourist town, but there is everything that you would need before you start to go out on your cruise. So in terms of reprovisioning, supermarkets, doctors, chemists, all your marine service providers, they can all be found in Airlie Beach. And at the marina here as well, we have a range of marine service providers. So if you need any chandlery, rigging, any of that kind of stuff done before you head out there, that's all accessible. It's a short walk from the marina here in Airlie Beach, or you can use one of our courtesy cars. We have a fleet of 4 courtesy cars which you can use to go and do your provisioning before you set off. But yeah, it's a really good starting point, and it's a nice place to start. You trip out to the Whitsundays, and also, you know, a nice place to come back to after you've been out cruising the islands.
And is the fuel wharf 24 hours there? Is it the old credit card type fuel dispense?
That's right, yeah. So because of the amount of commercial operators we have in the marina here, during the day you do need to make a booking during office hours, but outside of office hours, no booking required, and just pay with credit card at the wharf, yep.
And you still have a full laundry there?
We do, yeah, a full service, a full laundry. And we also have a service where somebody can come and take away your laundry, do it for you, and then bring it back to your boat.
And a question too for the cruising yachts people. If they, you know, they may have come up the coast, they've been sailing for a few weeks, they might have left something important at home or whatever. What happens if someone wants to have something mailed to them?
Yeah, well, as long as somebody has a booking in the marina, we accept post for any of our private customers. We go to the post office every day, pick up parcels, and then we just give them a call once the parcels arrive, and they pop up to the office and collect it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And while we're on it, I'm not sure if we covered it in slides to come, but is channel 8.1 still the channel of choice for communication?
Around the islands, it's either 8.1 or 8.2. Yeah.
Okay, understood. And you and a marina like Coral Seas Marina would be monitoring that?
No, we generally monitor channel 16, and then the channel to communicate with the marina when you're coming in here is channel 9.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so that picture there is of the Coral Sea Marina, and in the background, I'll move my mouse up there. This is basically the main road that's coming in from Proserpine, and around about 400 metres up over this hill is the main town of Airlie Beach.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to move this every time I move my mouse. So here's a good description here, so we might just jump through that. I'll let you keep talking there, Jocelyn.
Yeah, so like it says in the description, anything that you need in terms of pre or post out when you've been out cruising, you can access in Airlie Beach. Whilst it is a town of around 10,000, you know, we have 2 shopping centres, supermarkets, restaurants, doctors, chemists, all that kind of stuff, and the hospital is out in Proserpine, so easily accessible. They've spent a lot of money since the cyclone, the local council and the state government, on rejuvenating the foreshore area in Airlie Beach. So it's a really beautiful space to just spend some time and relax. And it's got, you know, beautiful parks and gardens and barbecue areas. So yeah, a really nice place to just relax either side of cruising out around the islands.
What's that we're looking at?
That is our Ocean Club here at the marina. So it's a private guest facility. Downstairs, it's got 12 ensuite bathrooms, which our guests can use. And then upstairs, you'll see there a sun deck, which has got barbecue facilities. And then inside, there's a guest business lounge. So if anybody unfortunately has to do some work while they're on holiday, that's an air-conditioned business lounge with access to a printer and a computer and Wi-Fi, so they're able to do that. And that's 24 hours a day, accessible for all our private guests.
So to confirm, that's for anyone that comes in on a private yacht and rents a berth off you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
really great facility. We've had it for about 2 years now, and it's incredibly popular with our cruising guests.
Very good. And then just up on the shore above where that is basically where there's restaurants and bars. Is that correct?
That's right. So we've got 2 marina villages, effectively the North Village and the South Village. Both of them are filled with restaurants, cafes, bars, and a lot of our tour operators have tenancies there. So from jet skis to day boats to the bare boats, and then obviously all our marine services, so electronics, electrics, mechanics, chandlery, that kind of stuff, and a dive shop.
Very good. Okay, everything's there. So that's an aerial view there, which is very good. So this is where you this is where you enter the marina. This is all the facilities we're talking about there, the main town over here. And then off in the distance with my mouse here, that's Hayman Island. So that's exactly 18 nautical miles from the entrance to this marina. And then just to the south of Hayman Island there is Hook Island. And then we can't see it over the back of this headland here, but just around the corner there we have Whitsunday Island, and you can then go out through the Hook Passage into the eastern area of the islands, which is where you find famous Whitehaven Beach and so on. Anything to add there, Nod, before we move to the next slide?
Well, I think firstly, I'd like to add, and I've sort of forgotten, but looking at that picture, that always amazes me, the colour of the water, because that's not actually edited on the photo, that's the colour of the water and the sea in the Whitsundays. It's always spectacular when you see it or haven't seen it for some time. I think what you just touched on there, Greg, as well, is it's a really good photo to give you some sort of perspective on the size of the cruising ground that we're talking about. There is a northern group and a southern group, which we're not going to touch on today, but for most people on their first trip out in the Whitsundays, we're talking about a 3-hour sail out to Hayman there, or to one of the first anchorages on the west side of the island. So in your first, call it a week trip around the Whitsundays, the distances are nice and small compared to some other cruising grounds across the planet, whether it be the Caribbean, where people are sort of putting almost a full day into relocating to the next location. So it's a perfect size cruising ground if you just want to mix it up, a couple of short days or short sails during the day and see 2 or 3 locations.
And to add with that, the perspective, so that's Hayman Island there. It's 18 miles from Able Point Marina here, Coral Seas Marina to Hayman Island. If you were then to say, right, the weather's perfect, let's go to the Great Barrier Reef, it's another 18 nautical miles out to, or about approximately 18 miles out to Bait Reef. And then if you were wanting to go from Hayman Island down to Hamilton Island, or from Coral Sea Marina around to Hamilton, it's also about 18 nautical miles. So 18 nautical miles is an often used distance measure in the Whitsundays, which, as Nod said, at around about 6 knots is 3 hours of cruising. Okay, another nice slide there of the facilities there at the Coral Seas Marina. And then what we'll now do, Airlie Beach, sailing the Whitsundays, we're now going to set sail. So what we're going to do first is imagine that we're sailing, as I said earlier, our virtual cruise around the Whitsundays. We're going to head off on the understanding that it's blowing 10 to 15 knots southeasterly, and that the nice place to go for our first night of anchorage is over here into the lee of Whitsunday Island. And this is one of the great things about the Whitsundays. The trade winds generally blow from the southeast or from the north-northwest. So because of the way in which the islands are orientated, there's normally always a safe anchorage either on the northwest side or the southeast side of the islands. So if we were having a southeasterly breeze, a great place to go for the first night is over into this area here into Syd Harbour. Another point to make before we get rolling through the rest of the presentation is that generally these anchorages that are on the western side of the islands, they generally go ashore in the dinghy, go exploring on foot. They're not really great swimming locations. They're more go ashore and climb mountains and explore ashore, or just sit on the boat and relax. So it's not the sort of water that you would generally want to be jumping in and having a swim straight away. If you want to do that, get straight around to the eastern side or the northern end of the group. So here we are in Sid Harbour. We've got Mays Bay, Whitsunday Island, and Sid Harbour here. There's a walking track that comes up to the top of the what they call the highest peak in the Whitsundays, called Whitsunday Peak. And so if I just click through, and here's Sid Harbour. So I'll get you to have a bit of a chat about that part of the Whitsundays, Nod.
Okay, thanks. So Sid Harbour we've got is, if you're flying in, I mean, we're talking about out of Airlie Beach, but if we're coming in and or you're coming out of Hamilton Island, the great thing is Sid Harbour is about an hour out of the marina and into Sid. As we said, from Airlie Beach, we're talking about 2.5, 3 hours by the time you get out of the marina to getting in and dropping the pick. If we go back to the map there, you can see that the actual anchorage is not where the blue dot is on that previous picture. It's actually a bit further south there, and it's actually in behind Sid Island. So it offers some protection. There's a walk up to the peak, and there's also a walk around the headland to the next, which is Sawmill, which is the little anchorage slightly to the north. Very well protected anchorage, and also very easy to access. Some of the other ones on the western side, for the novice sailors, they're a bit trickier to coordinate. You've got to enter in on a certain side of the inlets, etc. But a very nice open anchorage and an easy spot to come in and drop your anchor for the first night.
Okay, thank you very much. And then if we've spent the night there, we've worked out all of our first day out, everyone on board's getting to know each other. We're all relaxing. And then there's some more pics of Sid Harbour there. Nice shoreline. And, you know, definitely no problem swimming off the shore here and having a dip in the water. It's just not suggested at this point in time to be swimming off the back of the boats in that area. For certain reasons. There was a couple of incidents there about 1.5 years ago with some shark activity. We can't lie about that. It is what it is. So that's why it's suggested that we shouldn't swim in Sid Harbour at the moment.
I think it's a precautionary thing, Greg. I mean, the entire 5 to 10 years that we were all in the Whitsundays, I think we were jumping off boats into Sid Harbour all the time, but obviously, they've got to do their due diligence at the moment, as you say, and there's a little exclusion zone or just markers when you come into the anchorage advising that you don't swim.
Okay, and then Sid Harbour, that's a fantastic look from the highest point in the Whitsundays, from Whitsunday Peak. It's a great walk. I've done it on a few occasions when I was younger and fitter. But yeah, fantastic to climb up there. And as we go through this, Jocelyn's going to bring to our attention too some of the new additions that the marine parks and that the community have added in some of the locations. New walking trails, new lookouts, new underwater features, and so on. So we'll just click through here. With me, there we go. Okay, that's Mays Bay, protected from the southeast. Very good holding, nice and quiet, and usually the small beaches there. This is a good time too, looking at that picture there, to mention that the Whitsundays has a tidal range of anywhere from 2 to 3 metres, sometimes more. So it's a sort of area where a lot of your day tripping or a lot of your planning on any given day is around the tides, because sometimes you want to be arriving at a location on a high tide. Sometimes you want to be getting there on a low tide, depending on your activity, but the tides play a very important part in the decision making. It also helps to have the tide with you when you're out in the channel, when you're out sailing from one location to another, so that you're not pushing the 3 or 4 knots of tide.
I think that's a good point when you're talking about Mays Bay as well, because you're talking about that passage there. So Hook Passage between Whitsunday Island and going out through Hook is when the tide is running through there, and especially if there's breeze out to the east, it can at certain times of the day get quite rough when you're exiting on the eastern side of that passage. Also from Mays Bay, it's worth pointing out that you can actually, if you anchor a little bit further north up there, is further on the right hand side up and out the passage, if there's no tide running, there's actually some really good snorkeling up there as well.
Yes, along this shoreline here.
That's right.
Okay, so then we're going to move. So we've woken up on day 2 and we've decided that we're going to go and explore the western side of Hook Island and head up towards Hayman Island, Langford, Barley High, Blue Pearl Bay, and around Stonehaven. So some very famous locations. So here we are first. We're going to pop over to Nara Inlet. So I might let Jocelyn have a chat. Do you want to have a chat about Nara?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nara's a definite favourite anchorage with a lot of people who cruise around here. And I think somebody once said to me, look, it reminded them of a Norwegian fjord because of the aspect of it when you go in. The best holding is right down at the end there, as far as you can go down. So I think it's in the 100 Magic Miles. It looks like it's Anchorage 1 or 2. And it is often really busy when it's strong winds because it offers really good protection. Good holding, like you say, is a muddy bottom. So the anchor and the chain always need a good wash after you pull the anchor up. But right down the end there's a really nice Aboriginal interpretive centre. So basically, it used to just be that there was a platform where you could view some cave paintings, some Indigenous cave paintings. Parks and Wildlife over the last few years have really created this lovely boardwalk, and throughout it, there's a lot of signage and an interactive display now where you can press various buttons and hear the stories of they call them the Naro people. They're the Indigenous people in the Whitsundays, and they were a island-based Indigenous tribe. So they've got a lot of great stories about how the islands formed and their dream time. So it's a really nice walk up there. It's quite a steep climb, but it's worth it when you get to the top. And then in the summer, once we've had a bit of rain, like you say in the presentation, there's a beautiful waterfall that falls there and a little pool that you can actually swim in. Not swim in, sorry, put like a plunge pool at the bottom of the waterfall. So yeah, it's a really nice anchorage, Nara, one of my favourites.
And while we've got that picture, and that was a very good description of that, and then while we've got the picture in the background there, we're looking across the Whitsunday Passage to South Mole and the mainland in the background. So that gives some perspective again of distances. So if you were to set sail from from Nara Inlet to go across to South Mole or Daydream or to Shute Harbour, it's off in that direction, in the southwest direction there. Okay, so this is again the Nara Inlet. So this is the walk you're talking about. And this is the pause for a moment. So are these pictures current, Jocelyn, or do you think?
Yeah, they are. And then there's been an addition to that with a new boardwalk and then some additional interpretive signage. But yeah, no, it's a really nice walk, and there's some great signage all the way up explaining about the history of the islands.
Fantastic. And this is a pretty typical picture of Nara, because Nara gets busiest when the weather is not so great. So if there's a 20 to 30 knot southeasterlies blowing with the low clouds blowing through, or a northerly for that case, everyone tends to sort of converge on the Nara, the Goulnare, and so on, the anchorages that give basically 360-degree protection. But it's actually a really nice place to be in pouring rain, believe it or not. Okay, so then we come further north, Stonehaven, Langford Island, Black Island, which is also Barley High, and then Hayman Island. So Stonehaven, I was there about 12 months ago, anchored. I spent 2 nights in Stonehaven. It hasn't changed. It is still fantastic. I lived on Hayman Island for 4 years, many years ago, running all the water sports. So I used to spend a lot of my life towing people on water skis around Stonehaven. And it's a great spot. The water is always very blue, and it's protected. The big thing to remember about Stonehaven, though, and some of the other locations around the Whitsundays, it is prone to what we call bullets, which are the strong gusts of wind that come down off the hill. So you might have a 15 knot southeaster out in the channel, but you could get a 25 knot southeasterly bullet coming down. So it's always important to keep your washing tide on tight when you're anchored in Stonehaven. Anything to add there, folks?
It's definitely, sorry, you
go,
can.
Jonathan. Okay, I'll jump in. So just Stonehaven, as you said, or you pointed out, the major one when the sou'easters are in is that you will get some wind bullets coming down through the hills. But if you're looking to do across the top of Hook Island there and the other anchorages that we're going to touch on in a minute, is if an evening comes back around and into Stonehaven, is what you don't get in Stonehaven is the swell, which you get across the anchorages at the top of Hook. So if you overnight at any of the anchorages we're about to talk to, at some point during the night, there's a chance you'll get a bit of rocking and rolling, whereas round back at Stonehaven, it's much flatter on the water.
Very good. And Jocelyn?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's surprisingly emerged as one of the great places to have a little afternoon snorkel, Stonehaven, just at that southern end there that you can see in the picture. It wasn't traditionally one of the places where we would always recommend people go snorkeling, but there's some really lovely corals there at the moment. And it, as you say, you know, if you get there at a decent, if you've been somewhere else during the day and get back at a decent time in the afternoon, it's a nice place to just have a little explore underwater in the afternoon.
And there's a large number of moorings in Stonehaven. I can't remember the count, but I think it could be up around 20 or more. And the interesting thing about that is that, again, we were talking earlier about tides. Another thing to remember in the Whitsundays is sometimes it's good to plan ahead and say, you know what, let's just get going early so we can get a good mooring. So a lot of decision making in terms of passage planning around the Whitsundays is A, around tides, but B, is around heading off to the next location at a time so you can get the mooring you want, or you take the risk of going later and maybe not getting the best mooring that's available.
The other thing with this one, if we're talking about Stonehaven as well, we always used to, when we were working on the commercial boats out of Airlie Beach, is use this as our last night, because if you're returning back to Airlie Beach, it's just a fantastic, if it's a sou'easter blowing, a great reach all the way home.
Exactly. And I just got pointed out by Rachel in the background there, that picture of the people on the beach, that is from Multi-Hull Solutions Rendezvous. I think it was 2 years ago, which we are planning another one in 2021. So yeah, that's just a little plug there for the Multi-Hull Solutions Rendezvous, which we will be organising in 2021. Okay, just moving my mouse, clicking through. There we go. There, that's the picture there. Good snorkeling. And then one of my favourite locations, Langford Island. So I'll let Jocelyn have a chat here because there's some new additions here. Yeah,
absolutely. Apart from having a really lovely beach, particularly at low tide, they've introduced on the headland there a new walking track, which is accessible just from that little sand patch on the beach there. Which is, you know, it's a really nice slow incline. It's not a difficult walk, and then you come to this viewing platform that you'll see in the bottom right of the picture, and it affords you really nice views back over Hayman Island and Hook Island, and almost back as far back on a clear day back to Airlie Beach. One of the other really great things about Langford now is that the state government worked with an organisation called Reef Ecologic, and they have installed some underwater artwork. And one of the main rationales behind it was after the cyclone and some of the corals in certain bays were quite damaged, to provide visitors to the region something other than the coral to view when they're down snorkeling and diving. So Langford was one of the first ones that had the underwater art installed, and you can see it in the picture here, this turtle. At a low tide, you would actually, with a decent pair of polarized sunglasses, be able to see it from your tender if you just drive over it, but definitely it's worth hopping in the water and diving down and having a look. It's really impressive.
It's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And I just like this photo here too, just to give perspective again. So over there in those beaches there, that is the Stonehaven anchorage. And then this is the Langford anchorage with the moorings. And Nod was spot on earlier when he said that you can get a bit of swell out here, but you go over into Stonehaven, no swell. There's moorings here off Black Island or Barley High, and there's moorings along here, but they tend to have a bit of a roll, whereas over in Stonehaven, no roll. But yeah, that's incredible, that piece of artwork. And we'll see more when we get to Blue Pearl.
I actually wish I'd taken Jocelyn with Rachel and I when we went sailing last year, because we weren't aware of any of these features, and I think we just sailed over the top of them. So
There you go, insider knowledge now.
One of Rachel's favourite places is Langford Sandspit, and it's a matter of when you turn up and what time of the tide. But if you get it perfectly on the tide, where the reef out there to the west of it has disappeared, and you've just got the sand remaining, it's spectacular.
Totally. Okay, moving along. So we're going to pop into Blue Pearl Bay now, which is on the northwestern side of Hayman Island. Very famous location. Sadly, did get quite damaged by the cyclonic, the impact of the cyclone with all of the damage from the waves. But the fish life has not been affected. And this is one thing to remember about the Whitsundays. We talk about the damage from the cyclone. It might have damaged the coral, but it hasn't reduced at all the amount of fish that are there to be seen in the Whitsundays. So anything to add there, Jocelyn, as we click to this next slide?
Yeah, no, just again, there's another one of the underwater art sculptures there at Blue Pearl Bay. And in terms of the fish life, one of the things that Blue Pearl Bay is pretty renowned for are the giant Maori wrasse that live there. So, and they're incredibly friendly. You guys would know if you've lived in the Whitsundays, you know, they wait for the boats to come in, and you'll often see a big shadow at the back of the boat and then see a little blue head pop up. But for somebody who's never seen a Maori wrasse before, it's quite an incredible sight the first time you see one.
And then as we are sailing around the Whitsundays, people who have been there before might be thinking, oh, hang on, how come they haven't mentioned Hayman Island? The important thing to remember now is that Hayman Island and Daydream Island, as an example, they're not accepting visiting yachts. So that's why we don't mention them anymore. 10, 15 years ago, you could pop in and have lunch or spend the day at Hayman Island. It would cost you quite a lot, but you could do it. But at the moment, that's not possible. So we haven't mentioned that for that reason. Okay, clicking through. Now we're popping around into what is one of the most popular areas of the Whitsundays, which is the northern end of Hook Island, which is made up of Butterfly Bay, Luncheon Bay, Manta Ray Bay, and so on. So we're starting here in Butterfly Bay. So Nod, take it over. You've spent a lot of time there.
I have spent a lot of time there, Greg. So we've got Butterfly Bay, which is, I guess, the deepest anchorage that cuts into the hills there. You get a few bullets through Butterfly, but plenty of space to anchor. It holds a lot of boats. And then we're creeping around into Maureen's Cove, which is the next one we can see there in the picture. As I say, with any of these, unless you can tuck tight into the eastern corner of the anchorage there, I think you can see it in the picture, you do tend to get a bit of a rolling swell across all of these anchorages across the top, unless you're in at the top of Butterfly there, i.e. that bottom boat we can see there in the picture. But very well protected in a sou'easter, other than the occasional bullets coming down through Butterfly. Previously, this was the snorkeling hotspot, hence the fact we've got so many moorings across the top of Hook Island in all of these bays. All the places we discussed earlier, like Nara Inlet and all the inlets, you won't find any moorings in there because, number one, they're good high holding anchorages. And the other reason we have the moorings in these anchorages across the top of Hook is so that we can actually rotate the boats through in a day, i.e. you might have a 3-hour mooring so that someone can come in and take one for the morning, and then obviously somebody else gets a spot for the afternoon. Snorkeling all the way across these bays was spectacular prior to the cyclone, but I think Jocelyn can give us a bit of info. I think that's diminished somewhat in the northern anchorages, is that right?
Yeah, it has, particularly in Manta Ray Bay and Luncheon Bay. Butterfly Bay was initially, after the cyclone, quite badly damaged, but it's interesting. I was out there probably only a month ago and snorkeled in Butterfly Bay, and the amount of the soft corals that are returned already is quite incredible to see, especially apparently, 12 months ago, those soft corals were almost non-existent. So, I mean, whilst it's going to take the hard corals a lot longer to regenerate, the colours in the soft corals in Butterfly Bay were really beautiful.
So we've had a great question from Sue Ellen, which is one that we can, I think you just touched on it, Nod. Is there still a time limit for the moorings? And 2, if moorings are installed in a bay, can you still anchor?
There is, so in these ones across the top here, and it's been a while, Greg, but I think I'm
Yeah.
correct. We've still got the mooring exclusion zone, i.e. there's a row of markers where the moorings sit inside of those. You can
Yes.
anchor outside of those markers. It generally, in these bays we're talking about, is outside the markers. You're looking at stereotypically quite a deep anchorage drop in the pitch.
Yes.
So most people who want to anchor overnight in these bays would be looking to get in early afternoon, scout across the top and try and pick up a mooring. As for the timing on the moorings, I can't answer that with full clarity.
I can step in there. I believe during the day, it's a 2-hour limit on the moorings. And
Yes.
then if you pick up a mooring after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's yours for the evening.
Yeah, and that's true. And I for instance, last year I was in Stonehaven, and we knew that. We've decided we wanted to spend the day in Stonehaven, but what we did is we just made sure that if anyone came in, there was other moorings with the same colour as ours. So we were prepared to leave if we felt like we were being socially irresponsible. But I think it's just a matter of having a good conscience and just being fair to others. But if you know that there's no other boats coming in, it's not like you have to leave.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing to be conscious of when coming into the bays as well is if there's 2 or 3 available, and there's a big red one for a larger vessel, is to try and pick the mooring that suits your boat, because the commercial operators will get a bit dirty if you've if you're in a 12-meter vessel and you come in and pick up the mooring, the red one for the big boats. So just try to pick the mooring that suits you.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so, and if you can see, if you've got really good eyes, you can see here the white markers. So these are the white diamonds, which signify by line of sight between them. You draw an imaginary line between them. It says you cannot anchor inside here. So
Can you
anchor
see
out
those?
there. I can see them just there. I can see them there, and there. Okay, so I'll keep moving along. So next one is Maureen's Cove, which I was at just last year. Absolutely beautiful. Nothing's changed other than, yes, a bit of coral damage, but the shore is gorgeous. So I don't think we have to hold on that one for too long. And then Luncheon Bay is the same. Again, great for the fish life there. That's where you get the big batfish and also the wrasse that come up and basically say hello to you off the back of the boat. Again, social responsibility about feeding the fish. You shouldn't really feed fish. So it's more of a look and don't touch. And then if we keep coming along, one of my, again, a favourite spot is right out near what they call Pinnacle Point and the Woodpile. It's called the Woodpile because from the water, when you look at the rock formation, it's like stacked wood. And that's just beyond Manta Ray Bay, which is the most easterly of the anchorages on the top of Hook Island before you go around Pinnacle Point and head south. So, Jocelyn, it looks like, again, they've done some underwater art there.
They have, yeah, they've installed those manta rays there. And yeah, and 9 times out of 10, if you're there during lunchtime and in the right tide, you will very likely see a manta ray bay. It definitely gets its name from the fact that that's where they like to live. In fact, when I said I was out there a month ago, we saw one while we were just sitting on the back of the boat having lunch, which was really lovely.
Very good. Okay, so now we're going to move along. If we were on our virtual boat, we've sort of probably had first night Sid Harbour. We maybe had a lunch stop at Nara Inlet. We then spent the night up in Stonehaven. We might have then had a morning at Langford. We've been around the top. We might have stopped in Butterfly Bay for the night, and then we're coming up for our 4th night. And we've decided, depending on the weather, to either head down to Border Island, or if not there, we'll show you the next anchorage after that. So Cataran Bay, Border Island is, again, good for an overnight stop in certain weather. Once the southeasterly gets too strong, it can be a little bit rolly. But when the weather's right, it's a wonderful overnight anchorage. So Coral Rocky Beach, and there's a new walking track. And my memory is that Border Island always used to be great for snorkeling. Did it get very damaged, Jocelyn?
Yeah, I think the corals close to the beach, the hard corals definitely are. But if you go out a little bit further onto the shelf and go in off the tender, then the soft corals are really nice there.
Yes. And also on your way to Border Island, down the eastern side of Hook Island, there's also some wonderful day stops there at some of the anchorages along the eastern side of Hook Island. And then, of course, one of the most popular anchorages these days is Tongue Bay. And I'll show you why. First of all, that's an aerial photo of Tongue Bay and the anchorage there. And then from there, this is basically Hill Inlet. And just at the top of that photo is the top of Whitehaven Beach. But as you're about to see, and I'll get Jocelyn to talk about, they've also installed some fantastic infrastructure here at the national parks. So I'll let you chat away.
Yeah, so there was always a walking track from Tongue Bay up to Hill Inlet, and then that beautiful view back over the white swirling sands. But over the last 12 to 18 months, Queensland Parks and Wildlife have actually upgraded the track, and they've also installed, which I think is in the next photo, that's right, it's like a dual viewing platform at the top. So you can get two different angles and it looks back over Whitehaven Beach and Hill Inlet. And it also has some really nice, they call it an interpretive signage display that again gives you information about the formation of Whitehaven Beach and the indigenous culture of the islands. It's part of what they call the Ngaro Sea Trails. So on various places throughout the island, you'll see interpretive signage which tells you the story of the Ngaro people. It's really nice. They've done a really great job.
And what I like about what they've done is, because if someone's looking at that photo, they may be thinking, oh my God, what are they doing? But when you're down on the water, anchored off Whitehaven, or even just there in Hill Inlet, it's almost impossible to see all this infrastructure because of the way they've just tucked it away behind the shrubbery. And the great thing is that it's stopping people from walking or traipsing through the bush. So you just elevate it, and it's good for the environment what they've done, because they know that people want to get up there and have a look, but they've done it in a way where it's good and it's not bashing the environment to pieces.
And it's also very accessible, Greg, to everybody now. Like in years past, you used to do the trail and it was a bit rocky and bush bashing, and some people would stay on the boat and choose not to go. But with these new trails, and as you can see in the picture there, it's all very friendly for all ages to get up. And there we go. Look at that.
So that's that's the view from that lookout. So again, just putting things in perspective, this is Whitehaven Beach. Just here where my mouse is the gap through Solway Pass, which is a very famous body of water. This is the length of Whitehaven Beach, and this is Hill Inlet. So this is Hill Inlet on a low tide where it's all dried out. And then on the next photo is Hill Inlet with the tide in. Some cruising yachts like to come inside Hill Inlet here and basically let the water go out and sit on the hard. I don't necessarily like doing that because with low tide comes the sand flies. So I like a high tide in Hill Inlet rather than a low tide. So you can see there's a cruising boat is pulled inside Hill Inlet there. Okay, where's that, Nod?
This is off Hill Inlet, I'd say, isn't it, Bollock?
Yes.
So yeah, all of these places we're looking at now, as we talked about earlier, since we've left the top of Hook and we've come around onto the eastern side of the islands, is at any point during your trip, if that southeaster wind looks like dropping out, this is when you make the jump through to the eastern side of the island and come on down for your Whitehaven experience. We just touched on Tongue Bay, which is to the northern side of Hill Inlet. So in some light breeze, that's still a good anchorage to stay on the eastern side overnight. Or you can come down to the bottom end of Whitehaven and just cross the other side to an anchorage called Chalkies, which is still comfortable in light southeasters. But overnighting off the beach or staying where we can see these catamarans and that picture that's just disappeared. There we go. So you can, when we get this spectacular Whitsunday weather, spend the day at Whitehaven. As long as the forecast is good, spend the night there too. And it is sensational.
So that's Betty's Beach, which is on the northern side of Hill Inlet. Yeah. Okay. So now we're at the southern end of Whitehaven. I'll let you keep talking, Nod.
Yep. So with any weather coming, or normally it's just generically at the end of the day, if you're going to spend the the night at Whitehaven, most people will head down to the southern end of the beach, as I touched on earlier, and either anchor where these people are or just cross to Chalkies for slightly more protection for an overnight. Sand bottom all the way through with a bit of seagrass. You see a lot of turtles popping up. I had the underwater lights on last year, and actually we caught a few small sharks circling us in the middle of the night, which was spectacular to watch. There's a walking trail down here, again something that I haven't done that Jocelyn might touch on. But yeah, how long's Whitehaven Beach again, Greg?
Oh, don't. 7 mile, isn't it?
It's long enough to get really sunburnt. I remember that. But Jocelyn?
I think it's 7 kilometres.
Yeah, it's 7 kilometres.
7 kilometres of beach, and it really is one of the most spectacular beaches on the planet, I think.
And important to point out, there's no moorings because it's such a good holding. It's all sand. And I think that's wonderful because there's no visual pollution of moorings dotted all along. It's just it's very untouched. But while we're on that, Jocelyn, can you explain what the walking tracks are there?
Yeah, so there's a couple at the south end of Whitehaven. There's one which is up and over the peak to a bay called Chance Bay, which is a really nice walk. That one's a little bit more challenging, so make sure you take shoes and a bottle of water. And then recently, again, Parks and Wildlife have installed a new walking track at the south end there, just around the headland, which is it's a lot smaller and a lot easier. A lot of the day boats that go there, that's one of the walking tracks that they now take their guests to have a look at, but both of them are definitely worth a stroll in the late afternoon once you've anchored up and headed over to the beach.
You can notice it is the beach. That's why we've got slide after slide of Whitehaven Beach. Okay, now we're going to jump across to Chalkies. So here's Chalkies. Now, Chalkies has moorings now, doesn't it?
It does, correct.
Yes, okay, because it used to be a challenge to anchor because it was quite a strong drop-off. And if ever you were going to get a radio call at 2 o'clock in the morning from a client with trouble, it was often at Chalkies. So yes, so this is Chalkies Beach, which is also very beautiful and well protected from the southeasterlies, and it is located on Hazelwood Island. Okay, nothing else to add there. And then on the map here, so you've got Chalkies Beach there, you've got a Whitehaven Beach here. An interesting thing is that the deepest piece of water anywhere inside the Great Barrier Reef is right where that blue dot is. It's called Cyclone Trench, and I think it's about 200 metres deep. And then you come through here, through the Solway Pass, and we'll come around here to Chance Bay, which is the first of what we call our northerly anchorages, the anchorages that we go to when the winds are coming from the northeast, north or northwest. So we'll do that now. There is obviously other areas to sail if you're on a private cruising boat. As we said, we're sort of following the beaten track around the Whitsundays in this presentation, but there are more anchorages and more places to stop and snorkel all the way around here. This is White Bay out here. There's moorings along this shoreline now. And it's all very nice. So here we are at Chance Bay. So back over to you, if you don't mind, Nod.
Okay, so along the bottom of the Whitsunday Island here, we have Turtle and Chance Bay. As Greg touched on, these are our northerly anchorages. And it is important when you do go into these anchorages to make sure you don't have a southeasterly change coming through in the middle of the night to ensure you're not going to get left on a lee shore. These were very popular for us working on Hamilton Island, because when the northerlies were blowing, it meant people could be out of there around the corner and into an anchorage in approximately 45 minutes from leaving the marina. But on our lap, this is kind of about as far away as we're going to get from Coral Sea and Airlie Beach. They are lovely beaches, easy anchorages, and I guess protected, but I haven't really got much else to touch on those.
They're very good beaches to lie in the water with a pina colada. So then we're going to come around. So what we did there is we touched on, and if I just click back, hang on, go backwards. So if we just check here, you've got Chance Bay, and then you've got Turtle Bay over here where it says Whitsunday Island Reef. So along here, there's a few anchorages. So we've just touched on Chance Bay for today, but there are more than one of those bays along that shoreline. And then what we're going to do is go through Fitzallen Pass, which is this one here. So here's Hamilton Island. We're going to come through the pass of Fitzallen, and we're going to pop up into Goulnare Inlet, which is effectively called the cyclone anchorage of the Whitsundays. If you're a private boat and you were to be stuck in the Whitsundays in a cyclone, that's probably the most secure spot to go and hide. So over to you, Jocelyn, if you want to have a chat about Goulnare. Have you been to Goulnare? Have you been?
I have, yeah. And I actually, the first time I didn't quite realise how far in it actually goes until I went over the top of it in a helicopter, and it's quite incredible to see from the sky as well how far it actually goes into the island. Like you say there, it's got a muddy bottom, so it is a really good holding anchorage and often used in strong wind conditions, especially for private boats. A lot of people say it's their favourite place to go kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding to explore. So if anybody's got one of those on board their boat when they're up here, yeah, hop in and go and have a little explore right up into the end of the inlet.
It's also my favourite place on a high tide to go in torrential rain. It's the waterfalls up in the top of Goulnare are incredible.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So anything to add? You've spent a fair bit of your life up Goulnare, Nod?
I have, yeah. And we used to go from Hamo and just take the ski boats up there in the morning, just first thing before work, because it's nice flat water. But the charter boats are dissuaded, or the novice charterers are dissuaded from going into Goulnare because entering and exiting with keels is tide dependent. There's a transit, I think it was from the bottom of Henning across to the top of Pine Island was your transit for getting into Goulnare and out on the right tides. But out of the three, what you'd call the big inlets, Barcona, Goulnare or Nara, it's my favourite by far. Inside, you've usually got less boats. It's that little bit further south in the group. So anyone either chartering who wants to go in and try it, it's definitely my pick of the bunch. It's spectacular.
Very good. Okay, so now we're going to jump to Hamilton Island. So this is an aerial view of the marina of Hamilton Island and the yacht club. It's a very large, very safe marina. It's also got the airport just to the right of the picture here. They do welcome visiting yachts. You can you can call and book ahead. And there's now a full IGA supermarket on the island. There's fuel available and a myriad of restaurants. So Jocelyn, any new information that we need to know about there?
Yeah, no, I think you just touched it there. The big asset now to Hamilton Island is that large IGA. As you guys would know, there just used to be the small general store, which didn't have a lot of selection. It was very pricey. But yeah, if you're in the middle of cruising the islands and you want to reprovision and pop in, it's a really nice stop. Just, for going during the day, go and do some reprovisioning, have dinner, stay overnight, and then head out to the southern islands the next day.
Very good. And so for some people, they do choose to start and finish their charter from there. There's no operating charter company on Hamilton Island anymore, from what I understand. So if you do that, the charter companies will charge you an extra fee to have the boat delivered to Hamilton Island to start the charter. But for a lot of our private boat owners, we've got a number of boats that we've sold to people over the last number of years, power boats and sailboats, where those boats do spend a number of months each year berthed at Hamilton Island. If you are a private boat owner who's planning on going to the Whitsundays, it is definitely, along with Coral Sea Marina, they are the two pick marinas to choose to keep your boat and to fly in and fly out from. Anything to add? Nod, you spent a lot of years running around there?
Not quite as long as you did, Greg, but yeah, I've done a few laps of that island. I think it's one of those things that if you do end up arriving in the Whitsundays and having your cruise, whether you're taking your own boat up there or you're chartering and the weather does come in, i.e. that you're hanging out on the western side of the islands and you can't get around to Whitehaven, is mid-cruise coming into Hamilton Island, getting some time ashore. There's heaps to do. There's great walking tracks to lookouts up to One Tree Hill, but just even mid-holiday or mid-cruise, just come on in and have a day or so of just luxury on the island. It's a nice part of your holiday.
Yeah, definitely. True point. It's a great safe haven when the weather's not what you thought it was going to be and it's not what you saw in the brochure. Okay, so a couple more pics of Hamilton Island there. We'll click through. Now, what we've done there is we've basically gone around the beaten track of the Whitsundays. So we've come to Hamilton Island, and generally you might then go back out to Whitehaven for another night, or you might go back up to Sid Harbour or to Nara Inlet or whatever it may be, and then you'll make your way back to Airlie Beach to Coral Sea Marina and finish your lap of the Whitsundays. But then there's two other sides to the Whitsundays. There's the southern group, and then further north from Airlie Beach, you've got Gloucester Island. We did just want to touch on that. So down here in this southern group, if you're owning your own private boat, there's so much to explore in this southern group. We're just going to pick on one location today, and that's Shore Island. But there's so much more. There's Thomas Island, Brampton Island, and so on. So let's just have a chat about Shore Island, Nod.
Yeah, so we've picked Burning Point on shore really because if you're doing your first venture out of what's the central group this is a nice protected anchorage in the southeaster. What you just said was perfect there, Greg, is that when the Whitsunday turns on its stereotypical glamour conditions, you can go as far south as you like. And for most of us who've been around the islands or done what we call the bus route numerous times, is heading down into the southern group. Just offers spectacular anchorages, and even the ones that are in the book, when the weather is perfect, you can pretty much pick anywhere. You don't have to,
Yes.
Use the magic miles as your gospel and just follow it by the letter of the law. You can find your own little cove, drop the pick, and you'll normally be the only person there. So Burning Point at the bottom of the shore, as I said, sheltered in the southeaster. We've got Lindeman Island just to the north of it. And if you do want to creep a bit further south, there's Thomas Island just a little bit further, but then we just cruise into, I don't know how many more islands there are further in the southern group, but it goes on for the equivalent of what we've talked about to the north.
100 magic miles.
That's right.
So now if we click through, again, using the same theory. So we've talked there about, we've touched on the southern group. Here's the main group of islands. And then further north is this area called Gloucester Island. And you've got the double cones and then all the way across to Bowen and even further up to what they call Cape Upstart. But again, we've just chosen one anchorage to have a quick chat about, and that's the Gloucester Island, or what we call Hideaway Bay, Dingo Beach. There's what's the name of the yacht club that they've formed up there, Jocelyn?
That's the Shag Islet Cruising Yacht Club, SICYC.
That's the one. And have you got any background info on what that's all about?
Yes, so we're actually a sponsor of the SICYC. We get a lot of the cruising yachties come up here in the winter months. The person who founded it, Ken Thackeray, it's my understanding that he tried to become a member of a certain yacht club down in, I believe, Brisbane or the Gold Coast or somewhere, and for whatever reason, his membership wasn't accepted. It was seen to they were a little bit, like a yacht club can be. So Ken decided he was going to create his own yacht club where anybody could be a vice commodore and everybody could join. And this is, I believe, annually. That's where all the members meet up at Shag Island. They spend a whole weekend there and have all kinds of festivities, and everybody's welcome. And a couple of years ago, not last year, but the year before, they had over, I believe, 200 yachts up there for the weekend, all anchored out the front of Cape Gloucester Resort.
And Shag Island, I believe, is what the small island which is in the middle of the channel of the Gloucester Channel there.
That's right. And then on one of the days during the weekend, they go over to Shag Island and they have a party over there, and then DJs and a kite flying competition, and it's quite the party.
Very good. Okay, and so that there is a picture of the Gloucester Passage. I'll just move my mouse there. Over in the distance there, due west, at exactly 20 degrees south of the equator, is Bowen. And so that line also cuts directly through, or just to the north of Blue Pearl Bay. So Blue Pearl Bay, Bowen, the Gloucester Pass are all pretty much on the same latitude there. But this is the beaches of Hideaway Bay, and then around the corner there's a bunch of Monty's Resort, Cape Gloucester Resort and so on. So there's a mixture of a township and also a couple of resorts, but it's a fantastic spot if you're in your own cruising boat to head up into that area. Okay, and then of course, we've got the coral reefs. So as I said earlier, about 18 nautical miles northeast of Hayman Island, which is normally people step off either from Whitehaven Beach or from Hook Passage or from Butterfly Bay or from Hayman, from Blue Pearl Bay. They'll set out if the weather is perfect and they're on their own private boat, because bareboat charter boats aren't allowed out there. But if you're on your own private yacht, it's a must do if the weather is on your side, to sail for the few hours out to the reefs. Bait Reef has a number of public moorings and also commercial moorings where, as we said earlier, if you get out there at the right time and the moorings available, you can pick it up. And it is quite amazing because once you're out there anchored at the reef, you sort of generally can't see land. You can just see the islands in the distance, but you feel like you're in the middle of the ocean, but you've got no swell or wave activity. Chip in if you want there, Nod or Jocelyn.
I think myself, I used to have to go to the outer reef. As you say, like in that photo, you need the weather to be right to fully enjoy it. You don't want to be sitting out there in breeze of any type. If you're into your scuba diving, doing some drift dives through the reefs, just spectacular out there. And really, the sea and coral life around the island group is amazing. But as soon as you get to the outer reef, it's equivalent, but on steroids. So big GTs. If you're lucky enough in the calm conditions, even out in the deep water, you get swirling manta rays you can go and swim with. It's it's mind-blowing stuff when it really turns it on.
And the sound of the whales in the whale season.
Yeah, it's amazing.
When you're underwater, you can hear the whales talking to each other. Okay, so clicking through. This here, the red dots are all well-known dive sites, or sorry, red crosses. Well-known dive sites. There's the reef is extensive out there. You could spend a whole month. If the weather was perfect without any breeze, you could stay out there forever. But normally the wind is what chases you back into the safe haven of the island group. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the formal presentation. If you've got any questions for us, please type them now. I'll cross over to Jocelyn. Do you think there's anything we haven't mentioned that you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered everything pretty comprehensively. I was going to mention that in terms of island resorts that you can actually visit at the moment, there's only Palm Bay on Long Island that accepts day guests, apart from Hamilton, obviously. But it's a really nice little resort there at Palm Bay. They have a restaurant, use of the pool. You can pick up a mooring in the lagoon at the front, and I believe for around $50 per person, have use of the facilities for the day. Again, if you're on your way back from out cruising around the islands and you want somewhere to stay before you come back to the mainland for the night, or you just wanted somewhere to stay and be able to go and use the resort facilities, that resort there at Palm Bay is a really nice option.
Very good. I'm just coming back to this page here because I think it's there's that one there and this one here. So you can see there generally where we've been. Okay, so what about you, Mr. Michael Crook? Have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I'd like to. Can we go back to the start, Bola? That picture right at the start of this show. Keep going back. There you go. So that picture there, I'm going to do a bit of a promo for our Iliad 50 catamaran, which we've released last year as our new product. But that picture there, more to the point, is I took that picture with my drone just sitting out there while we took some people out for a famil on the boat. And it just goes to show the different tides. You never grow tired of seeing HealingNet because every time you see it's different. But what I said right at the start of this is I took that picture and that is the colour of the water in the Whitsundays. Done nothing to that, and it just blows me away. So for those of you that haven't done this trip, do yourself a favor and make sure whenever you can get your boat up there and do your first tour of the Whitsundays, because like all of us, the first time we did what we've just talked about, it's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's breathtaking. It changes all the time. It can be a frustrating location in terms of if you get the wind and the rain, but what I love is that you know that in a few days of cycle, you know that a good day is coming. Okay, so listen, thank you, Jocelyn, so much for joining Nod and I to do this today. It was good of you to give us some fresh perspective on the Whitsundays. Us old dogs have sort of been there and done it, but we haven't done it recently. So
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
And as we say, this this has been recorded, and this will then go up as one of our webinars on our Multi-Hull Solutions YouTube channel. But thank you, Nod. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Rachel. And we'll say that's it for today. Thank you.